I tweeted a couple days ago that I wasn't gonna review this movie, and that's because while I certainly enjoy enjoying movies more than I enjoy not enjoying movies, I find negative reviews to be more insightful. I find that they discuss ideas that can be learned and applied to other movies in cautionary tale form, and while there are certainly insights to be gained from positive reviews, I feel like they just come off as someone gushing over a film for 7 minutes and not really saying anything meaningful. That was my thought before I made this video, but then I had another thought. This isn't an educational channel. It's better when my opinions provide insight, but this is still just an opinion channel, and my opinion of Hereditary is that it's pretty fucking phenomenal, and I want to talk about it. Quick little anecdote before I start my review. Several months ago I saw the trailer for Hereditary before some movie, and I thought, a horror movie by A24 produced by the people who made The Witch? It's gotta be phenomenal. There's no way it's not. And the trailer itself hinted at a unique artistic vision, which intrigued me. Several months went by. No one I knew was talking about the film. It was advertised virtually nowhere aside from the previews for a couple movies. But I still tracked its release date because this was one of the few films that I was actually really looking forward to this summer. Then it comes out, and I can't see it immediately for reasons, and out of nowhere, everyone I've ever met in my entire life sees it the same night, and they all text me, "Oh, Taylor, have you seen Hereditary? It's so good." And I was just like, fuck you, man, I wanted to see this first. And then I saw it the next day, which is really not that long after, but I felt late to the party. That wasn't a good story. I don't know why I just told you that, but it contextualizes my experience with the film. So why do I like this film so much? Well, I feel that it is a quintessential horror film, or in other words, it has everything you could ever want in a horror film, and actually executes it very well. It doesn't feel like they're just throwing in whatever tropes they can think of. Everything in the movie services the story beautifully. We've got a large, eerie house, a broken family dynamic, fleshed out characters, scares built on legitimate tension rather than pseudo-tension, unexpected but understandable changes in plot direction, exposition delivered in a way that forces us to piece together a lot of essential information rather than just handing it to us, violence that feels grounded and disgusting rather than gratuitous and cheesy, a plot regarding a ritual that's very simplistic in nature but complex when you dive into the logistics of it, a hauntingly fitting soundtrack, and some of the most disturbing imagery you'll see in a long time. Up until now, only 3 movies had made me feel actually gross inside. Green Room, The Witch, and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And after I saw The Killing of a Sacred Deer, I read this article that was headlined, "The Killing of a Sacred Deer makes The Lobster feel like a walk in the park." And I feel like Hereditary is to The Killing of a Sacred Deer what The Killing of a Sacred Deer is to The Lobster. And I mean that in the best way possible. This movie moved me in ways I thought I had become too desensitized to be moved in. And that's not because it's particularly graphic or scary. I mean, it's quite graphic, but it's the ideas behind the film that are truly disturbing. It's conceptual. And because it's so conceptually disturbing, it makes the imagery that much more effective. It goes without saying that the performances are fantastic. I mean, this is a top-notch cast. Alex Wolff? Let me tell you a little something about Alex Wolff. I've tweeted this, but he is on the come-up. Teen heartthrob Nat Wolff's been starring in his John Green movies and the masterpiece that is Death Note. Meanwhile, Alex has kind of been on the back burner. But starting around last year, the prodigal son has returned, and I think he's a genuine talent that's gonna do great things. I thought he was gonna have a very supporting role in this film, but he's actually so important that I'd consider him a second protagonist rather than a supporting character. His crying may appear to be a little silly, a little comedic, but his character is supposed to be kind of pathetic, and crying doesn't actually sound nice in real life. People sound stupid crying all the time, so I was fine with that, and that's really the only gripe most people have had with his performance. He was great in this movie, and Toni Collette knocked it out of the fucking park. This is the best I've ever seen her. I mean, I could go through the whole cast list. Millie Shapiro was superb, Gabriel Byrne pulled my heartstrings, but everyone was just on their A-game with this one. And it's not just that they performed well and there were great horror elements. As a film, in general, it was just Wonderfully crafted. Setup and payoff is executed to a T numerous times. We get such a great sense of geography for the house. Those transitions, those hard match cuts, worked so well every time. And then the tilt shift establishing shots to make everything look like a miniature. Brilliant. That's been used very well twice this year, actually. Game Night did a great job using its establishing shots to make everything look like a board game, and Hereditary did a great job making its establishing shots look like one of Annie's miniatures. And while we're speaking of the miniatures, they don't necessarily impact the plot directly, even though they're used as a good instrument to measure the deterioration of Annie's mental health, but they frame the entire story. The film opens and it moves over to a miniature where the movie actually begins, and while this is initially passed off as a cool little transition, I believe it's really demonstrating how orchestrated the entire plot was. And I don't mean the plot of the film, I mean the... Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, just stop watching. You're not doing yourself any favors. I'm about to get into some heavy spoilers, and for your sake, I don't want you to see them. So, you have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And I don't mean the plot of the film, I mean the grandma's plot to bring the god of hell, I forget his name, into a physical manifestation. You see these carefully crafted models of the real world, and everyone and everything is just so perfectly and meticulously in place. Meanwhile, in those locations, the grandmother's meticulous plot is falling perfectly into place. So there's that connection there, and then it also connects Annie to her mother, which supports the whole idea of passing stuff on to relatives and, well, hereditary stuff. I just think that that's so brilliant. Just the plot itself, this woman trying to manifest this god into her son Charles, and then him killing himself because of it, and so she names her granddaughter Charlie to try to redo what she messed up, is just so airtight. And now that we're going into spoilers, I might as well talk about the scene. So it's about 20 minutes into the movie, and at this point I've mentally prepared for a slow burn. I assume something spooky is gonna happen, and then more spooky and spookier things will continue to happen until it builds and builds up to this disturbing climax, just like The Witch. But as soon as I saw that girl chopping pecans at the party, I knew something was about to go horribly wrong. But I did not imagine it would go wrong to the extent that it did. So Peter's driving Charlie to the hospital, her allergies are getting really bad, and she sticks her head out the window, and at this point I'm thinking he's gonna swerve and she's gonna fly out the window or something like that, I don't know. But what actually happened is just so much more gruesome and disturbing and changes everything that I expected the plot to revolve around. I'm a very reserved guy, in that while I feel a lot of emotion, I never physically respond to what happens in a movie. But when that happened, I lost my shit. My jaw dropped, and I'm not making this up, because I'm embarrassed by it, and I wouldn't make up that I did something embarrassed by it. I was actually that shocked by it. I wasn't scared. I don't really get scared by horror movies. I hate saying that because I feel like a douchebag, but I was shocked. I was shocked. That's what it was. And the scene wasn't just for shock value. The film took this horribly gruesome incident and then became a slow burn, building up from where that scene had elevated the film. And just the way that the imagery from the scene recurs throughout the film is so haunting and disturbing and effective. And there's even a human side to this horribly disturbing film. We've got this really sweet father-son relationship between Peter and Steve. When tensions are high, Peter still tells his dad that the dinner he cooked is good, which is more of a gesture of goodwill toward his father than a proclamation of how good the food is. And the whole time, even though Peter fucked things up big time, his dad still has his back, which is just really sweet, and it makes it all the more heartbreaking for things to have gone the way that they went. The ending is incredibly similar to The Witch, a ritual coming to fruition in a very similar way, but it still worked perfectly on its own. The build-up is just so effective, so when things end like that, it's emotionally satisfying because everything that was set up paid off, but it's also deeply disturbing because, it's not like it's a happy ending or anything. The image of Alex Wolff with his nose bandage and the crown is gonna stay with me for a long time, I think. It's gonna be hard to get that out of my head. I'm incredibly apprehensive to call anything perfect, but fuck it. Hereditary is a perfect horror film. An absolute 10 out of 10. My only gripes with it were that they didn't do a great job explaining why Steve lit on fire the second time they threw the book in the fireplace instead of Annie, but I'm sure there's some explanation for it that I'll pick up on the second time I watch it, which will hopefully be soon. Aside from that, the CGI was not great at times, but it was like ants and flies and stuff. And when Peter jumps out the window, it was shot at a very low shutter speed, so the motion blur kind of took me out a little bit. That said, everything else in the film is so magnificent that I'm willing to forgive those small gripes and still give the film a 10. Just top-notch filmmaking, beautifully disturbing imagery, a story that's simplistic but complex in its themes and character exploration. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. This is no in-depth analysis of the film. This is just a review of how I feel about the film and why I feel that way. If you've made it this far, I assume you've seen the film, and if so, let me know what you think in the comments. Share, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff, and I'll see you soon when I make a negative review that will inevitably be more insightful than this video. Thank you.